Back to another Star Wars Unlimited Shadows of the Galaxy reveal session. We have absolutely a ton of cards to go over. Let's get right into it. From the Bounty Hunter crew, Greedo, Bosk, Boba Fett, and Boba Fett again, we've had a couple of Bounty Hunters in Set 1, and although they all work together, and although they all share the Bounty Hunter keyword trait, they weren't exactly a deck you are meant to build. You're not building a Bounty Hunter deck, you're really building a Boba Fett deck. Now, in Shadows of the Galaxy, we're getting a whole lot more Bounty Hunter cards, and we're also getting some cards that work together with them synergistically. So let's take a look at that. First off, we have the Covetous Rivals. 6 cost aggression, ground unit 5/5 Bounty Hunter. So obviously 5/5 for 6 is not exactly the stat line you're going to be looking for, but it not only has grit, which means it can get a little more powerful the longer it's on the board, but also has another ability. When it's played and when it attacks, you can deal 2 damage to a unit with Bounty. So usually if you're going up against a Bounty deck, this card goes from fine or good to great. Not a Bounty Hunter deck, it's just a little bit understated normally, but with grit it can make big swings for its 6 cost. Though I'm not exactly sure if there's gonna always be a better option for decks that aren't really looking to collect big on bounties. Then you also get the Reputable Hunter. Sort of has the same theme as the Covetous Rivals. It's a 3-cost command unit, 3/4 Bounty Hunter, and it gets even better when your opponent is playing bounty characters, because when your opponent has a bounty on the field, then it costs 1 less to play. And a 2-cost 3/4 is absolutely amazing. Now, ideally, your opponent plays a 2 or 1 drop bounty card with bounty turn 1, and then you drop Reputable Hunter turn 1 as well, putting a 3/4 on the board turn 1. Absolutely amazing. The best way this card ever ends up happening. Usually what's going to end up happening is you're either A, not going to draw it turn 1, B, your opponent's not going to play a bounty unit turn 1, or C, they're not going to really be playing any bounty units at all. Ultimately, this card's not always going to fire off at its maximum potential, but when it does, it's going to have it's going to be a big moment for you in this matchup. But of course, if your opponent's playing a lot of bounty cards with bounty on it, and you're playing the Bounty Hunter deck, you're probably already in the favorable situation regardless. The next card we got to look at, the next Bounty Hunter, is IG-11. If you don't know, we got IG-88 in Set 1. This is IG-11, same model, different robot. It's a ground unit, aggression, 5 costs, 6/5, droid and Bounty Hunter. If this unit would be captured, defeat him, and deal 3 damage to each enemy ground unit instead. And then on attack, you may deal 3 damage to a damaged ground unit. This is going to be a great way to take units off the full field in general, and your opponent's not going to be able to play any cards that just capture their opponent's units to get rid of him easily. He is obviously a pretty good card in general, but I think he also slots pretty well into a Bounty Hunter deck, because Bounty Hunters are going to be looking for ways to knock your opponent's units off the field pretty easily, and he's going to give you that option in a nice little package here. Also, a card that worked with Bounty Hunters that I promised to talk about, or that really was promised within the set when you're talking about a set that's full of Bounty Hunters. 3-cost Relentless Pursuit, a cunning tactic. Choose a friendly unit. It captures an enemy non-leader unit that costs the same or less than it. If the friendly unit is a Bounty Hunter, give a shield token to it. Now, we talked about capturing in the previous 2 videos, really. All that it means is that you take your opponent's unit and you put it face down under your unit, and they're removed from play. And then when your unit would be captured itself or defeated, then they get their unit back. Probably, I'm assuming there's going to be some way in the game, maybe a carbon freezing card or an execute card that allows you to just kill or defeat a unit that has already been captured. But right now, it seems that capturing an enemy unit is a temporary way to get rid of him. The thing about capturing big units is going to be the fact that your opponent's always going to get them back. And unless you can protect the unit that is capturing them, you're usually going to just really be delaying their ability to use that big unit. And if that big unit previously had damage counters on it, and then you decide you have to capture it, it could be even worse, because you essentially just held their unit for them. That being said, if you do capture a unit that's really vital to your opponent and keep them off that unit for a couple turns, it can be absolutely huge. And if you're playing a Bounty Hunter deck, this card is a shoo-in, because at the very least, it's going to give your Bounty Hunter a shield token, and make it harder for it to die and lose the unit that it just captured. We also get another card that sort of works with the idea. It's a heroism card, 3-cost tactic, spare the target. Return an enemy non-leader unit to its owner's hand. Collect that unit's bounty. This is actually a really good card into a heroism bounty hunter deck. Mandalorian probably. This is probably going to be in the starter deck with the Mandalorian. It's going to allow you to collect bounties pretty darn easily, and then it's also going to allow you to work as a sort of waylay at the very worst. It's going to allow you to just say that unit's pretty dangerous right now. I'm going to hold your opponent off on it. If your opponent plays a big unit with a big cost with a bounty on it, this card absolutely decimates that unit. It makes them have to either have to A, replay it, B, never play it again, and also you get a little kickback for it as well by collecting that bounty. Then another card that is not really a bounty hunter card, but it sort of works with the same theme. 3-cost event, Cactic, command, take captive. There we go. A friendly unit captures an enemy non-leader unit in the same arena. It's just the generic capture card for the set. It's going to probably make its way into a lot of draft decks. Will it see a lot of play in competitive? Probably. But it just ultimately depends on how reliably you can say that taking the opponent. So waylay or share the target even, it takes your opponent's unit off the board, but they have to then pay the resources to get it back. So it's not really not really a when they come back, but an if it comes back. Capture is sort of the opposite. Now, of course, you can capture a unit and it never comes back because the unit that captured it never dies. But usually, whatever unit gets captured, your opponent's going to get it back. So it sort of takes them off the field for it's even less permanent than a card like Spear at the target. But at the same time, if you can keep the unit that captured it alive, or if it's the sort of unit that they need on the board right now, it can absolutely swing the game in your favor. Talking about some cards that aren't bounty hunters that got revealed, we have the First Light. A space unit for 7 calls, Vigilance and Villainy. 4 power, 7 HP, Underworld, Vehicle, and Transport. It has Grit. Each other friendly unit gains, Each other friendly non-leader unit gains Grit. This is a really important ability. This card is most likely going to make its way into Krennic decks, and it's going to be pretty darn good. But that's not all it does. It also has a smuggle cost. You can pay 7 and smuggle it into play, and then you have to deal 4 damage to a friendly unit. So you might be saying 4 damage is a lot, and it is. But by turn 7, you should have a unit on the field that can take a decent 4 damage. And never forget that Krennic ability turns on when it takes one of your units have damage on them. And then if each of your other friendly units gain Grit, you're essentially saying, okay, well, one of my units is taking 4 damage, but if it survives, it's also getting plus 4 attack. So it can be seen as a negative, but it also can be turned into a positive within the right sense of circumstances. Obviously, if you have only weenies out or weak units are about to die, this card can't really be played and take full effect of its abilities here, because you're just going to kill whatever you use it on. But sometimes that can also be a fine thing to do. Maybe you have a unit that wants to die or you want to kill. Maybe something like the Super Laser Technician. Or maybe you just have a unit that you don't care dies. He has 1 power, 1 HP, maybe he has an own play effect, and you just don't care if he's here anymore. You just want to get rid of him. That being said, there's going to be a way to get use out of this card, and people will find it. I think this is absolutely going to see play, hence why they made it a rare. We also have some other Underworld cards to look at. We have a 6-cost Pirate Battle Tank, Command and Villainy. It's a ground unit. 4/6 Underworld Vehicle Tank. Sentinel. Units in this arena can attack your non-Sentinel units or your base. And then has a smuggle cost for 7. You can smuggle it from your resource row. It just seems like a generic smuggle card. It's going to make its way into a lot of draft and sealed decks. Going to make its way into a lot of decks with people who don't have a lot of different cards. But what I'm finding, and what a lot of people are finding while playing with Set 1 Spark of Rebellion, is that a lot of these bigger costed units, because of just how big their stats are, they can be interchangeable despite their maybe not over complicated play style and mechanics that you want to use them with. What I'm trying to say is that you never really know what deck is going to need a 6-cost, 6 HP Sentinel that can be smuggled out for 7 or has 4 power, or is an Underworld card or a vehicle or a tank, and it can make its way into a deck, and I think it will, but I think ultimately, just from face value, it's a pretty generic card. That is not really getting too many people too excited. Something card that might get some people excited. We have L337, 2-cost Cunning Heroism unit. It's going to be an Underworld unit. It's going to be a droid. It's going to be 2/2. When you play, you can rescue a captured card, and if you don't, give a shield token to this unit. Obviously, if you're playing a deck that really wants to rescue your own cards, you have to have your opponent capture them first. And so, with an ability like this that says you can rescue the captured card, it can sometimes be a little bit daunting to just say, okay, I'll play that card, right? Because I can rescue a captured card. Well, you're not always going to be able to do that. But, being the fact that if you don't do that, you get a shield token on this unit, it either can rescue a captured card, or it can become, it basically says shielded, which is pretty darn good. I mean, shielded is a good effect. Now, 2/2 on a 2-cost, not exactly the best stats in the world, but with shielded, it's not something that you're not going to ever play. And then also it has a smuggle cost as well. You can pay 4 and smuggle it from your resource row. So if you happen to drop this turn 1, or either draw it turn 1, and you realize you have a better turn 1 option, and quite frankly you don't care about a 2/2 shielded unit on turn 1, then you can put it in your resource row knowing that on turn 4, you're going to have a unit that, or rather, not just turn 4, from turn 4 onwards, you're going to have a unit that's going to allow you to say, oh, your opponent captured my biggest unit, my powerful unit, I need it this turn. I'm paying 4 to drop it and get it back, as well as I'm going to have put a 2/2 body on the field. I mean, that's the beauty of smuggle right there, and it doesn't even have to come out of your hand. You can have 0 cards in your hand and still make that play. Absolutely amazing right there. I think the smuggle cost, in fact, is probably the highlight of this card, along with its effect. Yeah. L337, its really shining spot here is its smuggle ability. The ability to say at any point in time, you want to say, I want to play this 4-cost to rescue a captured unit, and if there's none in the field, get a 2/2 body with shielded at the very least. It's a versatility option that is going to, well, I'm not going to say it's going to make its way into decks. That's a little too far-fetched. But it's definitely going to have its uses and its utilities, especially if you're really afraid of some of your important key units being captured too frequently and too often. And there seems to be a lot of ways to do that in this later set. So it's going to be something you're going to want to take a look at. Here's another card that works with all these Underworld cards we just talked about. The 1-cost McClunky. It's going to be an Underworld card, and it's going to be a trick card, so we're probably going to see other Underworld cards in the game that reference Underworld cards in general, not just units, but also maybe events as well. We already know that trick cards can be reduced by their cost by Jabba the Hutt, meaning this is actually a free card in a Jabba the Hutt deck, which is probably the place in which you most likely play this card. You can return a friendly non-leader unit, Underworld unit, to its owner's hand, and if you do, deal 3 damage to a unit. This is going to be an absolutely great utility piece in all Underworld decks. It's going to allow you to pick up a card. Now, the importance of picking up a card is something that I didn't really appreciate when I first looked at set 1. The ability to say a card is not really providing any value this turn, or it will provide more value if I can play it from my hand again. So it serves its purpose, I can pick it up. And when I do that, I can return a friendly non-leader Underworld unit to my hand. That's an extra card in my hand for options, maybe to resource in a future turn, to play again for its effects. And then I also get to deal 3 damage to an enemy unit, and it's going to allow me to just maybe zap a unit off the field, collect a bounty maybe, zap a unit off the field, move out an annoying like 1-cost 1/1 unit, or a 1/1 unit in general that's going to be dealing damage to me over time that I really don't want to waste the attack on dealing with. Or soften up a bigger unit that I need to take down with more powerful effects or other units, and quite frankly right now the trade for me isn't really optimal the way the math works out right now. Dealing 3 damage to a unit for 1 is absolutely beautiful. If you have Jabba out, you're dealing 3 damage to a unit for 0. It's absolutely the best math, some of the best math you can get your hands on. And depending on what unit you end up picking up with this ability, it can even be even better than that, because you have another unit to play down to get more effects, or you just have an extra card in your hand for any various other things you may need that for. Card advantage is almost always important in every card game. Yep, that's right. Let's talk about a leader unit for once in this reveal session. We've seen the leader units from the starter decks, both Moff Gideon and the Mandalorian. Let's talk about another Mandalorian, Bo-Katan Kryze. Right, she's going to be an aggression heroism unit. She's a princess in exile. She has the only trait she has is the Mandalorian trait, and she has an action. If you attack with the Mandalorian unit this phase, deal 1 damage to a unit, not a unit or a base, not a unit and a base, a unit. And that's not a bad thing necessarily, but it's important to put that out there because it's a little bit more constraint than some other of the aggressive abilities that we've seen throughout the game. But at the same time, it doesn't cost you anything. If you're playing a Mandalorian deck, which you will be by playing Bo-Katan, you're going to have Mandalorian units and you're going to be attacking with them. You're going to just basically get a free damage every turn to a unit. Obviously, it does take an action, and I always talk about this. Actions is the main resource of Star Wars Unlimited. It is the main way that the economy works out. How long something is going to take to get done is almost as important as how many resources you're actually spending to get it done. Maybe not as important, but it's pretty darn important. This ability is a little slow. It's 1 damage and it's going to take you 1 action. Sometimes at the end of your turn, you may have tapped out all your resources and attacked with all your Mandalorian units, and you have an option between dealing 1 damage to a unit or taking the initiative. And there's going to be times where taking the initiative is just going to make a ton more sense there. 1 damage to a unit may not end up making that much of a difference in the long run, especially if you already know you have the math on the table. Take out that unit and another attack next turn anyway. What's 1 damage more? But do not make the mistake of believing that A, if your opponent already has taken the initiative before you, that 1 damage is not going to build up over time. Or B, there are going to be absolutely circumstances where 1 damage is going to matter and it's going to change the math throughout the rest of the game. And usually, as 1 damage builds up, it's going to win you the game. That being said, if as an extra action, if you control 6 or more resources, you can employ her as a leader unit. She becomes a 4/7. 4/6 is, it's pretty kind of on curve for most 6-cost leader units. On attack, you may deal 1 damage to a unit. That's base. Then if you attack with another Mandalorian unit this phase, you can deal 1 damage to a unit. So essentially, you can attack with this unit and deal up to 2 damage extra along with her base 4. That's 6, but it doesn't even have to be in the same place. It's not deal 4 damage. Deal 6 damage to a single leader unit. It's not even deal 4 damage and 2 damage somewhere else. If you happen to attack with a Mandalorian unit before you attack with Bo-Katan, it's 4 damage to 1 unit, 2 damage to a different unit, 1 damage to a different unit, and 1 damage to a different unit, or they all can go in the same place. You can split them up almost any way that you like. And that's where this side of the card really shines. The versatility makes it really important. You can be able to figure out the math of the turn. 4 damage somewhere it matters, 1 damage over somewhere else, 1 damage maybe on the same original unit you attacked, because that matters there. You can attack into your opponent's base, which you can never sleep on. Deal 4 damage to their base, 2 damage to a different unit. It's a pretty decent swing. It's almost as good as obviously Vader from the starter deck. Not as good because you can't. Well, maybe even better, but obviously not as good. But the versatility is absolutely important, and you get this person out on 6, not 7 like Vader. And so if you compare Bo-Katan to some of the other aggression leaders in the game, she's not blowing them out of the water. But she's pretty darn good. And she's a Mandalorian. She revolves around Mandalorians. So as far as the game goes on, and as good as the Mandalorians may ever get, she's only going to get better with them. That being said, let's talk about some Mandalorians we have revealed. We have the Clan Challengers, the 5-cost Mandalorian unit. Aggression, ground, 3/6. It's also a trooper unit, so if you want to play precision, slot this into my Tarkin deck, I don't know, maybe. It's going to have raid 3, and then also says while this unit is upgraded, because that's the Mandalorians, they like to upgrade their units, it gains overwhelm, and that's just a generically good effect. Raid 3 with overwhelm, 6 damage swinging into something and dealing the extra damage to your opponent's base is pretty darn good. Now obviously if you're playing in Bo-Katan, you can do 6 damage to one thing, a little extra damage somewhere else with Bo-Katan's ability, overwhelm into your opponent's base maybe, I don't know. It can start adding up pretty darn quickly. Then we also got to look at another aggression heroism unit, 2 cost, Ketsu Onyo. It's going to be a 3 power, 2 HP unit, Mandalorian, Underworld, and Bounty Hunter for all the keyword traits we talked about in today's video. Saboteur obviously is going to continue to be an amazing effect here, because quite frankly, Sentinel decks and Shield decks are going to be in the game forever. And if you don't have a good enough option to just sneak past Sentinels, you can get into the situation where your aggro gets stalled out by heavy Sentinel control. Or rather, maybe if you never can get into that situation, the design team definitely knows that that's going to be something that they have to be wary of. That being said, it also, when this unit deals combat damage to a base, you can defeat up an upgrade that costs 2 or less. It's a Mandalorian, they deal with upgrades. We've seen it before. We're going to continue to see it again. I made a video talking about how the Mandalorians sort of have the upgrade thing already going, and that's sort of going to be their obvious movement forward. Also, they also seem to be a pretty aggressive faction so far between Sabine, Bo-Katan, Boba Fett. Although Boba Fett's not an aggressive character, but he definitely wants you to get rid of units. They want to attack. They want to aggress in some way, I suppose. Not a Mandalorian, not an Underworld unit, not a Bounty Hunter, but a cool card nonetheless. Clone Deserter. It's going to be a 1-cost Command Heroism unit, 2/3, Fringe, and Clone. We've seen only a couple of clones so far. We're going to see a couple more with the Bad Batch coming, but we're probably not going to see too many until we get into the prequel sets. When we do that, maybe this card will become a lot better than it is right now. It's going to restore 1. When you attack with it, you can heal 1 damage from your base, and a bounty, draw a card. 1 cost for 2/3 with restore 1 is a pretty good trade, which is why it has that bounty on it. Or rather, probably the other way around when you think about it. It has the bounty, so they gave it extra stats. Because the bounty is more for theme. The stats are there because the bounty's there. Anyway, so I think it's a pretty good card, I think. It's only going to get better when we get more clone-related cards within the prequel sets that are eventually going to be hitting and getting into our hands in the coming years or months, or whatever it may be. But right now, I think it's still a pretty good card. Good stats for its cost. Restore 1's pretty good. And sure, your opponent gets a singular card off of killing him, but a singular card can not matter. It can maybe lose you the game, but at the end of the day, it's a random card. It could be not good for the matchup. It could be not good in general, or rather, it could be not good in the situation. So, I don't think the bounty is too detrimental to say that you wouldn't play this card if you're not playing any better 1-cost drops or early game units. But as far as early game units go for Command and Heroism, it's a pretty good option, I think. Then another Heroism card, Vigilance this time, 6 cost to 8, Gentle Giant. It's a ground unit. It's a Wookiee. It has grit. Wookiees and grit seem to go hand in hand, and it was actually revealed by the FFG team that we're going to see a lot more Wookiees with a lot more grit shenanigans. And it says on attack, you may hail damage from another unit equal to damage on this unit. Absolutely amazing. Obviously, there's just a lot of weird healing shenanigans and damage shenanigans that can go on right now with the Redemption. Will it be good? Will it make any amount of sense to do those mechanics and those shenanigans? I don't know. But the point is that you can always look at the combos that could be done when you're thinking about looking at a new card. I think it's just a generic good common. And again, it's a Wookiee card, and it has grit, and it has 8 health. It's a big body, and it's going to be amazing in draft and sealed. But it could get even better with A, when more Wookiees come out, or C, when we see what else Wookiees can possibly do. Maybe a leader unit that directly deals with you Wookiees. Probably going to get an event that says, well, one of your Wookiees gets plus hails damage equal to the damage on them, or, well, that they already did that. Or can draw a card equal to for every 2 damage counters on one of your Wookiees. And wow, I get draw 3 cards off that effect. Pretty darn good. I don't know. We could see it happening, and I'm here for it because everybody loves Wookiees. That's pretty much going to be it for today's video. Technically, we have more reveals to look at, but I'm not really sure the sort of moral, I guess, logistics of talking about those cards. We have a tech card. We have more Mandalorian cards that were revealed, but they were exclusive reveals made by Main Deck, a YouTube channel. And I figured because their YouTube video is still fresh, I'd rather not talk about their exclusive reveals. And if you want to see what those cards do, make sure you go head over to their channel and take a look at that instead. But that's where we're going to end off today's video. That's going to be the end of today's reveals. Of course, we're going to have a ton more reveals as the weeks come along. Apparently, by the end of the week, we're going to have a new Bad Batch. We're going to have a Bad Batch leader or Bad Batch card revealed. And we're going to be here trying to talk about that card when we do. Because the Bad Batch are pretty darn one of the best things that really came out of Disney Star Wars. And there aren't many great things, but I feel like this is one of them. This set is sort of just all the good things that happened with Disney Star Wars between the Bad Batch and the Mandalorian. We got Rebels in the set before that. That sounds like the most popular Disney Star Wars stuff. They seem to be not leading too heavy into the sequels right now, and it's going to get pretty rough when they do because there's a lot of controversy around those movies. And yeah, that's it for today's video. I hope to see you guys in the next one for more reveals, for more Star Wars Unlimited, for more universes if that's what you're into, for Season 2 PCG, or other forms of content that we may end up making on this channel. I hope to see you guys there. Well, that's going to be all for now, but if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you guys go ahead and watch some of our other videos that we've made on this channel. Also, give this video a like if you thoroughly enjoyed it. And of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our future content. And I hope to see you guys back at the Roost.